So if you're a masculine man, you need to know off the jump not to chase a masculine woman because y'all are going to clash. If you're a feminine man, you know not to chase a feminine woman because now y'all are going to be clashing over who's washing dishes. No, I'm with you, but y'all.
Um, for me, I think giving back to your youth kind of comes down to not just being in somebody's life that you want to give back to, whether that be your own bloodline or a youth in the community. Um, I think it's more so being consistent in their life and being consistent in what you're giving back to them. And then also realizing that you can't give the youth everything. You can't give them all the skills. You might be able to provide multiple skills, but sometimes you need more people and more support with other skills. Um, and I think something like if you were a lawyer or something, you can give and teach financial literacy to the youth versus somebody who's a protector or a teacher, and they can teach them other skills. So I think it's more so consistency and then knowing your skill set that you're able to pass down to the youth.
I'm glad you mentioned that because uh, knowing what's in your capability and then reaching out, that's also one of the core tenets of leadership is like knowing your limits, knowing when you're not the most effective person for something and seeking that proper individual out. Josh, what was your take on this?
Yeah, the actual question, um, I agree with a lot of what Pop Key said, to be honest with you. But what I had when it comes to the actual question, we should get back to the youth by letting them know they don't have to be their parents if they don't want to. I think we take so much from our parents and sometimes don't even realize it, whether it's physical or mental trauma or even certain bad habits. And we end up going down the same path whether we want to or not. And I think we do that by introducing them to more than one perspective. I mean, a lot of kids follow the same perspective as their parents until they're introduced to other perspectives. And I think the introduction to multiple perspectives will fuel any critical thinking skills that a kid will have, and in turn that kid will learn to think on their own. Then I think we should help teach financial education to the youth. I think it's important to inform the kids as soon as possible about how the society thrives on the poor remaining ignorant of money and debt. So we should help teach financial education to the youth to ensure that they don't fall into the trap of debt as they get older, and then mentor them into spending their money on assets and not liabilities. And then lastly, I think we should emphasize the importance of Black youth going into business and then gaining ownership rather than just be laborers until retirement. I think if Black people so desperately want to live in a poorly integrated society, it's critical for them to gain ownership as Black people at the very least, because with true ownership and not just earning more money, then we can start changing some of the policies that actually work against us. And then we should, on top of that, emphasize the importance of supporting Black business, because we think, because I feel like when we start thinking, connecting, and building together, then we as Black people can actually start to gain some substantial power in society. I know what you're thinking, Brian.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, one thing Josh said was kind of teaching them to make their own decisions, and I think that's one of the big things I missed in giving back to our youth, and kind of mindset. The biggest thing I did get from Pop Keys is that he kept saying mindset. You got to change their mindset, and I think that's one of the biggest things is mindset. People and mindset for the youth leads to you even them making decisions that are healthy for them when you're not being there.
That was really powerful what you said there, Josh. I'm kind of curious on what was your experience. Well, there's two things you said that stood out to me, but first, what was your experience with being introduced to multiple perspectives, and how did that impact you?
My experience to that, I think I was always open to multiple perspectives. I was never grounded to the perspective of what my parents or just what my parents displayed on me or anything like that. I was always open. And I think that really goes to what I said in an earlier episode about my morality, like how I just from an early age, I just was conscious of how morality was about, you know, the certain good and the bad in the world. And I think that goes the same with like the multiple perspectives. And of course, I wasn't perfect from when I was a kid. Of course, as I've gotten older, I've learned to become more understanding of other people's perspectives and like, oh, okay, they think of this because of the way they were raised, or just, you know, that linear perspective. You know, the last episode Mars was on to, we were talking about linear and non-linear views. So it was just, I think it was just, you know, what people would say a blessing, you know?
Something that was innate that came to you.
Yeah.
And then also, I think this may have been an off-the-record conversation we had when we were recording the movie reviews that you and I collaborated on, in which we talked about the importance of Black businesses. And so what you were saying is like for us to be self-sufficient and being able to sustain ourselves, to be valuable contributors in the global economy. And so by doing that, that would be an answer to one of the biggest failures of integration. Does that ring a bell?
Which was
clarify. So when we integrated, what we did was we were pretty much allowed into spaces that we didn't own. And so that established and cemented that relationship. And so that sets the precedent for what we're currently seeing today, as opposed to, okay, well, let's say if during integration it was also, okay, well, we can have these spaces, but we're also going to provide you these spaces. So, you know, it could be two-way, reciprocal, in a way that benefits not only that benefits everybody, essentially, to where you aren't dependent on another party, in which you are seen as an equal, and that didn't happen for obvious reasons. But that's what I would consider one of the biggest failures of integration. You remember that at all?
Say it again.
Do you remember that at all?
The conversation we had?
Yeah.
I don't really remember, no, to be honest with you, the specific conversation.
Well, new information.
Because I know we talked about supporting Black businesses a lot, but I don't remember that specific conversation.
That's a pretty deep thought too. I didn't really think about it a lot. Like, you think about it, but in that psychological term or psychological realm, we never thought or saw representation of business owners. We just was always customers.
Well, it's not so much about representation. I think that's a slippery slope, especially in modern times, how this to be utilized. But you're exactly on the right path. What I was getting at, in saying that, okay, well, if we only are ever the consumers, so now it went from you can't shop here to now you can shop here. Not we respect you as your own entity that has your own businesses and that will buy from you, and that's not what happened. So it was like, it's kind of like a relationship with a parent and a child, and the parent never acknowledges their child's maturity. So like the child's an adult, but they still treat them like a child. Like it doesn't become like a reciprocal relationship at any point.
Yeah, and when or if will that ever change?
You know, that's not up to me to decide. It's I like to take things into my own hands and shape my own systems and shape my own world. I can't dictate that on a large scale and say that's going to change today. But one of the big things I'm a proponent of, and then also when we had the previous conversation, was the bottom up approach. So working in our immediate locus of control, and then expanding outward. Des, I'm really curious on how you took the initial question as well.
To be honest with you, when I was originally looking at the question, I didn't have a genuine response. But after listening to what Pop Keys had to say, it was very reminiscent of like if you watched any videos of like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaking, or Malcolm X, or a combination of those two, and just about all the possibilities of being independent Black communities, and how independent Black communities we are able to then dictate the curriculums and the infrastructure that our kids and future kids, and of course community as a whole, are able to go through and of course build through. Almost like how we always say when a someone from Far East comes to the US, and they build up a business, they're pulling someone else from the Far East as well to help them build up that business. And it's something along those lines. But how I would now answer the question, not even going into the context that Pop Keys went into, but it would be a clear understanding of the divine masculine and the divine feminism. I think obviously 21st century politics and the way we've just kind of confused things, and I'll say confuse things as like an umbrella term, because it can confuse things in a way to where we're so old fashioned that we're having a hard time adapting. But then it could also be one of those things where like, oh, I see people are saying this is the new norm, but it doesn't represent me. So I think understanding truly what the divine masculine and the divine feminism is will better equip those children that feel that internal tug of, well, maybe I'm a man, but maybe I'm not as masculine as my dad was or his community was. And maybe whatever vision of masculinity they were perpetrating isn't an actual representation or accurate representation of what divine masculinism is. So then there's a confliction, because I don't want to be like my dad. You lose that structure, that masculine father structure that is present in your life because of that internal confliction and that internal confusion, and you go down a different path. And then of course with the divine feminist, understanding that, or divine feminism, understanding that man on his focus, or man in his purpose, needs that feminism to come in and balance, whether it be in ways where you learn self-care, or it could be introducing a woman that balances it and having a bit of that that chaos that you bring order to, because we all know as men, the number one thing to motivate us is to challenge us. And so with that being said, presenting that challenge, and it is going to be a challenge. I think it's a woman's job, in a sense. I'm not gonna say job. I think it's a woman's role in the realm of masculine and feminism to challenge the man. I think if you're no longer challenging your man, then you can't ever complain truly when the relationship stales and stagnates. And then I also will say, like, the reintroduction of survival skills. A lot of the things that we need to survive, like say if it's Armageddon, a lot of the things when we're talking about like farming or hunting or just anything that is truly akin to our human nature, it's looked at as corny, or as like you're holier than thou almost, where like farming and all these understanding vegetation and understanding just basic biology in a sense is corny it's corny in a way. And I think we need to get away from that, and then also remove curriculum based limitations. Like one thing that Pop Keys talked about was like there's 6-year-olds, granted how true it is, we haven't seen it with our own eyes, but 6-year-olds are doing algebra and pre-algebra and stuff like that. If we think about it, that's not something that children are introduced to till 5th or 6th grade. I think sixth grade is pre-algebra. So having these like curriculum-based limitations, holding stuff back because they may not be ready, when in fact they could have been prepared to do that 3 or 4 years in advance. So now you're delaying their growth as opposed to allowing them to fit into the rooms that they deserve to be in.
Yeah. And by doing that, you create a culture of mediocrity.
Yeah.
This was something that we spoke about at length in the past, in which it incentivizes or encourages the masses to level out and be something that approximates on the same playing field, as opposed to somebody who, like, to that point, children are very intelligent, like any given child. And so the information that you feed them, the systems that they're exposed to, the environment, all that is either going to accelerate or impede their growth at some level. You did also touch on the challenging the masculinity in a healthy way in the context of a relationship. And I understand clearly what you're saying, but for those who are listening, I think that that statement there can be grossly misinterpreted, and I don't want that to happen. So could you expand on that?
Well, to be honest, if it is misinterpreted, I genuinely don't care, because what I was thinking about when I was, going through these thoughts is that when we flash back to the conversation we had with Rosetta, and it was foundational principles that every man should have. One of the constant things, and I think we even had this conversation with Tamer as well, was that we're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. Like there's a known that the current, I guess you can say, view on masculinity is flawed, and the current view of feminism is also flawed. So understanding divine masculine, and it's not even just divine in the sense of, you know, having 2-3 girls, or it can include, you know, a monogamous relationship, things of that nature. But it's also understanding that man is truly driven by purpose, and that if you are not striving towards your purpose, but you choose to procreate, or you choose to be in, you know, these polygamous relationships with women, if you don't have the balance to essentially balance all that, if you don't have the balance to take care of all these seeds that you're planting, it is going to cause you to self-destruct internally, and it's going to cause those people that you think you're taking care of to resent you because you're not fulfilled chasing your purpose and being the divine masculine, being the creator that you are. And then and you know, in correlation to the divine, you know, feminism, it's truly like being comfortable with challenging your man, like understanding that you are chaos, you're organized chaos. Like women, the easiest way to understand it is you can ask your shorty, what do you want to eat? And she'll say, I don't know. But then turn around, you know, 5-10 minutes later and say, oh, well, I want this. And it's like, well, why the fuck didn't you tell me that 10 minutes ago? Or if it's just a simple date night thing, and you ask shorty if she want to go to the movies, and her answer is no. And then 30 minutes later, it's like, well, I want to do something. It was like, well, I asked you if you want to go to the movies. And just understanding that men think in a very logical way, and that is okay. And that women are very emotional thinkers, that they may not want to go to the movies in that moment, but 30 minutes later, as they're thinking and they're, you know, doing all their system checks internally, they're like, well, damn, I do want to spend time with them. Maybe the movies is the way we could do that. And so I think it's just truly understanding the way women think and then the way men think, so there isn't this gross miscommunication as we get older. Because let's be honest, divorce rates are 80% of marriages end in divorce. Money is not the only reason why divorces are happening. No. It's a great majority of that stems from not understanding the divine masculine and the things exactly, and not understanding that points perfectly to what Mars just said. You have this communication imbalance internally that is only going to I guess you could say, magnify as you bring other variables into this. So that's marriage. That could be you know, obviously with marriage you have your in-laws, miscommunication with the in-laws. Well, your mom doesn't like me, well, your dad doesn't like me, think shit like that. And it really is just gross miscommunication. And then you have kids grow to resent you because maybe you're not what they envision a man being, or maybe you're too much of a man for whatever your son or your daughter needs. So it's one of those things to where not having the solid foundation of understanding what those two are, and how truly, like when it comes to yin and yang, they're supposed to, when they come together, good shit is supposed to happen.
Yeah. And can I say, I get exactly what you're coming from. One thing I urge more people to do is to kind of get away from, because what most people don't want to do nowadays is get away from gender roles, right? And so I urge you to think in a different way. Instead of gender roles in male and female, gender roles in masculinity and femininity, right? Because one thing that Pop Keys kept, one of his biggest points of giving back to the youth was them understanding their divine masculinity and divine femininity, because it'll help you understand who you are. And that's one of the biggest things that I preach in my mental health journeys for me, myself, and other people, is to understand who you are, right? And so the mindset on the gender roles is, yes, there should be gender roles. We can't get away from gender roles, but it's not gender as far as male and female. That's the problem, right? It's gender as far as masculinity and femininity, right? Because a straight man can either be masculine or feminine. Yep. Right? A gay man can either, not all gay men are feminine. Some gay men are masculine. Okay. So when you are gay, also, you still got to understand your roles, right? So it doesn't really matter. So when you get into roles and you say you're a female, you're supposed to do this. No, because some females are masculine. A straight woman can be masculine. You understand? You kind of get
True.
what I'm saying? So when you change your mindset and everybody else changes their mindset on the masculinity and femininity, you'll realize that when you get that and you understand that, oh, I'm a feminine man. I don't like taking out the trash. I don't like doing the lawn. I don't like, that's just a masculine thing to do. It's not a
Yeah.
man thing to do. And so if I find me a masculine woman who's also still very straight, that likes to or can take out the trash or can, you understand? So that's, and back to what you just said was conversation. You have to have that conversation. You got to, what we don't do nowadays is have the conversation on, okay, so what will be your role in this marriage? Are you masculine or feminine? Are you going to cut the grass? Are you going to take out the trash? Are you going to cook? Or are you going to clean? It's not that you're a female or that you're a man. I cook and clean, and I'm masculine. So I just try to urge people to change, but know your role is always a good thing, even on teams. Trust me.
That's those are major facts, and I'm glad you said that, because one of the books that I've been listening to recently is The Way of the Superior Man, and the author, I forget his name, but
David
he points, yes, he points to that specifically, to where every relationship, it's going to be polar opposites, where the masculine man needs the feminine woman, or the feminine man needs the masculine woman, or there's a balance of the two where you're masculine, the two perfectly coexist. And I'm glad you said that, because that is a perfect way to branch off from maybe my perspective of it. Because granted, I do understand the directive that's going, but when I'm speaking to me, like, just genuinely understanding those roles, and obviously we're not talking about me, we're talking about the youth, so that could be a way to communicate that effectively. And not to say that, understanding these things is going to set the youth up for ultimate success, but I think it gives them the understanding, and that goes back to my last point, where if you're not limiting the information, and I'll say information because obviously I do think certain things do need to be limited, but if you're not limiting the information, then their minds are able to take them to different parts of different levels of thought that children who are limited aren't able to get to, or if they do get to it, it's at a much later age.
Boris, to your point about the masculine woman and the feminine man, to me that just sounds like discord, and that's I'm just gonna be candid. you may not agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. But to me, I think a lot of what we see today is a consequence of the imbalance. It's not necessarily that is. It's under the guise of being progressive, but it's like, okay, what are we progressing toward exactly? So I think we have existed so long without, specifically in our community, without seeing proper dynamics of the masculine and feminine in their interaction, in their eternal dance. We've been so far removed from that. Now we're trying to figure this much out. And so along with that, we open, there's a void, and it's easy to fill with confusion. I think that's a consequence of that.
I completely agree with that. I do completely agree with that. And I think, yes, that the confusion and the consequence is of not understanding if you're masculine or feminine, because we were just told that it was connected to male or female. And that's what I was kind of explaining to you. So for centuries, it's just been connected to male or female. And it's never been taken to apart until now, because we've not only have male and female anymore. Now we have trans male, now we have trans, so now everything's are just being broken down a little bit more. So it's not that it's gender roles. You understand what I'm saying? And it's more so, to me, and like I said, it is my opinion, but once we understand who we are, I'm a feminine person or I'm a masculine person, what do I, and what am I okay with doing? What am I okay with bringing to the table, right? So what we said earlier about for the youth is knowing your skill set. So if I know my skill set isn't teaching finances, why am I trying to teach finances? It's the same thing for masculinity and femininity. Why am I trying to go pick up weights when that's just not me? Why am I trying to go cut the grass when that's just not me? You understand what I'm saying? And I think that's why we get two masculine people together, because we're saying, oh, I'm a female, I should do female things, or I'm a male, I should do male things. Or now we're doing the opposite and saying, I don't like gender roles, but yet you are still feminine. So you still want to do feminine things, but now you're just fighting gender roles because that's the thing to do nowadays. You know what I mean?
And now, to take a brief pause from today's episode for our Business of the Week segment. This week's Business of the Week is Motime, a software development company that specializes in no-code tools and application development co-owned by Jeremy Cuffey and Bracy Parr. Motime has experience building on the Decisions platform, Bubble.io, Enrule, Appian, and several other tools in addition to traditional full-stack development. Their team works with clients of all sizes, from small businesses to enterprise-level clients in a variety of different verticals. Call today to discuss if Motime is a good fit to help you maximize your efficiency and streamline your workflow. Back to the episode.
There's a few different things to dissect there. And so the first of which I see is that it seems that you're coupling survival and general domestic things like being able to make a bed, being able to cook, like basic things. I wouldn't say that's a masculine or a feminine thing. That's something that everybody should be able to do. And I think when it really comes down to masculine or
That's
feminine,
an opinion for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's very subjective.
It's very opinion, because some people never learned to do laundry. Some people never learned. I was in the military thing. People are like, hey man, can you iron my shirt? So I mean, I feel you.
I get it, but I don't think that that a lack of ability is grounds for establishing a baseline. I think that's a deficiency, honestly. And
That's what
so
I'm getting at. So that's where the confusion was back in the day, where they told you that this is coupled with this gender. And that's kind of what I was saying. And I was agreeing with your confusion. There's plenty of confusion there. But the reason is, I don't know really, but to add with it is them saying you have to do this because you're a man and you should do this because you're a female. You know what I mean? Not necessarily because this is your skill.
Yeah. And the other thing, if I could just expand on Mars' thought while it's fresh in my mind, another thing that I don't think we should confuse is deficiencies with just not to do. Like, there are just some genuine desires not to make your bed. There's some genuine desires to not want to cook. Like, there's a lot of things that you consider that are maybe survival skills that the masculine man genuinely doesn't want to do. And I can honestly say, like, a prime example just from my experience of dealing with some women, like if they came up in a situation to where they had their parents were split and they were raised with their dad, then taking out the trash and motherfucking cutting grass is like, that's like first chore.
Changing tires.
Yeah, like first chore to them is not washing dishes or cooking or whatever. Like, they don't develop those, what we would consider feminine skills, until they're like in their late teens, early 20s. Whereas like a lot of the things that we consider masculine, like cutting the grass, like Mars just said, changing tires, changing your oil, that's like the first things that they learn. And then you may have a guy who grew up in the exact opposite situation, to where, you know, grew up with moms, and moms is like, well, you're gonna learn how to wash these dishes, you're gonna make sure your bed is made, you're gonna know how to cook, so no woman ever has to do it for you. Right. And then so you have that counterbalance to where these two come to coexist, and it's like shorty knows how to do all this shit that the man don't know how to do, but that doesn't take away from his manhood, and that doesn't take away from her womanhood. That is just a masculine woman who understands her essence as a woman, and then a man who understands his essence as a man. But on the scale of how we look at things, we're like, nah, that's just like, and I agree with you in a sense, like some of those are survival skills, but those are two people balancing each other out based on what you would perceive as deficiencies, to where you know how to do all of that, whereas they came up in situations to where they weren't privy to at an early age all those things that we know from the beginning. Because I was in the same boat as you. I had to learn how to do everything. My mom made me wash dishes. My dad made me cut the grass. My mom made me fold and iron my clothes. My dad made me change tires and know how to change the oil in my car. Like, I had the best of both worlds. But then when you come in contact with women, it's like, well, what the fuck do I need if I know how to do all of this stuff? And then now you have that imbalance, and that imbalance will breed miscommunication. And then it's just like, well, the only true conversation we need is, like Mars said, where do you fit in this paradigm to where I know how to let you lead in your divine feminism or your divine masculinity, and then I dial it back, and I can, because obviously, because I'm very versatile and diverse, I know how to do everything. I shouldn't have an issue with, all right, well, damn, I'm good at washing the dishes. You know, I could have been in the goddamn, look, I could have been in the back of the Ritz-Carlton or whatever, not the Ritz-Carlton, that's a damn the back of Varia, excuse me, you know, washing all the dishes, and they look like they spit shine. So it'd be knowing where you can get in. And like I said, some people are just so polarized on either scale, to where you have the feminine where she just wants to be at the crib, like she wants to turn that house into a home, And then you have the divine masculine where it's like, hey, I want to chase my dreams and do all this other shit. I ain't got time to wash dishes. I ain't got time to raise the child outside of just, you know, passing down those masculine duties to the child. So it's like these, it's almost like in the greatest scheme of how I can describe it, it's almost like the political scale. So you have the right wing and you have the left wing, but then you have the far right wing and then you have the far left wing, and then you have your what is it called?
Moderates.
You say it again?
Moderates.
Yes, you have your moderates in the middle that you know are try to please both parties.
See, I understand where you're coming from in terms of suitability. So first and foremost, for us, giving back to our youth, and specifically as Black people, I do truly believe that us as men need to step up and accept the responsibility that comes with our masculinity, and vice versa for women and femininity. And that's my personal take. And so the scenario that you just detailed was us handling and continuing to live in dysfunction in a disjointed fashion. So you said that in either scenario was the girl being raised by the single dad, or the inverse for the boy and the mother. And so that's not addressing the root issue.
No, so it's not living in dysfunction. It's understanding where you're at in the paradigm, so you understand where your opposite exists within your reality. So if you're a masculine man, you need to know off the jump not to chase a masculine woman because y'all are going to clash. If you're a feminine man, you know not to chase a feminine woman because now y'all are going to be clashing over who's washing dishes. No, I'm fucking with you. But y'all are going to be like she needs, like that feminine woman needs the masculine man to lead in that situation. And she's going to be looking for that feminine man to lead in the situation that he's not equipped to lead in. And that's okay. So it's almost,
I don't think it is.
I think it is because
think of it this way. I don't mean to interject, but think of it this way. If relationships, no matter if it's male, female, or boyfriend or girlfriend or husband, it could be us. We're friends. We just met. We have a relationship, right? Teammates is the biggest way to explain it, right? Like I said, players have to know their role. If you don't know who you are on a football field, why are you kicking the ball? Why are you even touching the ball, man? You alignment. You understand what I'm saying? So people if you don't know your role, you're going to end up clashing with somebody else who either doesn't know their role. So now you just have two people that don't know their role. And that's what I think mostly happens, because we're like, and one thing I wanted to ask you, Brian, is masculinity, because one thing you just said, I don't want to misspeak it, but is masculinity exclusive to being a man? Because you said, because a man has to step up to his divine masculinity. However, I just explained that some men are feminine, period. They're nowhere near, some men are nowhere near masculine, but they're still straight. You understand what I'm saying? Masculine and femininity does not mean sexual orientation too. And this does really go with giving back to your youth, because the youth need to understand who they are. So if they know who they are, they can know their skill set and their role, and then they can teach the hope is that they come in contact with more people while they're dating that know their role and know who they are, so that they can match better as a puzzle. But if you don't know your puzzle size or your puzzle piece or how you're gonna fit, it's just a blurry puzzle piece. I'm like, where does this go? And that's most people nowadays, because they think about that class that you were talking about. Male is masculine and feminist, and women are feminine. But if you understand that they can be both, or either or, it opens up more.
Masculine and feminine energy, when it comes down to it, they're more so a suite of traits and characteristics. And so in aggregate, if you look at on average, a man is going to have more of those masculine traits than a woman. So like for the example being, so nurturing, that's something that we widely accept, that's something that's traditionally more feminine. They say women are better at nurturing children. Well, there's several dads who are better parents than the mom. I mean, that's just, and that's not always the case. I'm not acting like that, it is. But my point is that we have these individual attributes. If you look at in sum total, you get something that approximates them weighing out differently.
If I could play guy's advocate to that, the dad being the better parent is not dad being the better nurturer. The dad is being the better structure setter to where that child has to follow that rigid structure. So therefore the behaviors have to be in line with said structure, whereas maybe they are deficient in some of the emotional aspects that a woman are that the woman is able to mold per se, but he's not a better parent based on his ability to nurture that child versus the mother. It's more or less one of those things to where, and I want to take it back to what you said as well, where you're talking about dysfunction. Dysfunction will breed dysfunction, which is why I'm saying we have to understand
Exactly.
where you fall within the masculine and feminine sector. So if you understand where you fall in that masculine or feminine sector as either a male or a woman, like Mars said, you know what puzzle piece you're looking for. Because if I'm a masculine man breeding with a masculine woman, that woman is not going to be a great nurturer to our child. And therefore, we are going to clash because that woman is going to be trying to force the nurturing component into her life for something that is actually, even though we think it is divine to her being as a woman, it is not what comes, like it's not what comes natural. Like what would come natural to her is cutting the grass. And I'm not even gonna say cutting the grass, but it would be one of those things where like she prefers to be out. She'll prefer to be hanging out with guy friends. Like it doesn't fit what you perceve.
Know what
Like
that means?
you said what?
So you know what that means?
Well, I mean, regardless of what it means, it's just in the grand scheme of like while we're on two opposite ends, where we're not saying dysfunction should continue to. I'm not trying to say dysfunction should learn how to better breed dysfunction. I'm saying dysfunction needs to figure out why they're dysfunctional, and that dysfunction obviously comes from them choosing partners that, and a lot of times, is directly correlated to the conflict. So, say if I'm if I'm a masculine man and I clash with my father, is making sure that I'm not looking for my father in the woman that I'm looking for, and those some of those characteristics, like some of those that stubborn characteristic, or maybe just pride or whatever. I'm like making sure I'm not looking for that, understanding that we're too masculine. I need to be looking for something more feminine to where I can lead, so I'm not clashing with this woman the same way I'm clashing with my father, because we're two alphas in the same house trying to lead at the same time.
And I think that's just my. I think we're looking at the same thing, but we're on quite polar opposites. It seems,
Yeah.
because it seems that I don't really, in the confines of a relationship, I don't think that a woman should be in her masculine and specifically what I'm talking about is in heterosexual relationship. I'm not an expert in anything else. I'm barely an expert. I'm just somebody who has some experience in heterosexual relationship. So with that being said, like I said, there's a certain dynamic at play. And so even with women possessing certain masculine traits, like that's something that we see more and more as we see as a consequence of feminism, for better and for worse. When you see with women, like one of the positive things is women obtaining financial independence and advancing in their careers in the workplace, and that allowed them to make different decisions and not be solely dependent on another individual. So that, I mean, that's you could say there's some benefit there. And so let's go with that. So even with that, there can be a woman who is more ambitious in her career, but still retain her femininity in her relationship. It's not easy. I think that's something that we're seeing women struggle with today. A lot of women, because they think that because they advance in their careers that makes them more attractive to men, masculine men, and masculine men. Like me personally, as long as a woman is like, Josh, you laughed when I said this, but when it comes to like a woman's finances, as long as she's not poor and she has like decent understanding of finances, like she doesn't have bad spending habits, that's what's important to me. Like if she happens to have a well-paying job or something like that, that's just a bonus. I'm not gonna date a woman just because she makes a dollar amount, right? Like that's a non-factor. That's not something that most masculine men, I don't think that we're looking for that when it comes to a serious relationship partner.
I agree, but I agree on the context of my understanding that we're looking at it from two, and I'm not saying it in itself as far as two different fields. We're looking at it from how it benefits the youth, whereas you're looking at, I guess you could say, the consequence later down the line of how it can potentially benefit the youth. When Mars and I were talking about like how understanding your divine masculine and your divine feminine benefit the youth, it's the understanding that a lot of people, and I say a lot of people, a lot of kids, like they're dating at younger ages, they're having kids at younger ages. So if you understand what you're going up against at a younger age, and it's kind of like removing the curriculum based off of, based on, or removing curriculum based limitations, it's understanding what you're going up against and who you are at an earlier age, to where it creates a smoother line. Like we have a lot of, how can I say, and I say trauma loosely because trauma is a very powerful word in the sense of how people resonate with it. But it's one of those things to where we go through so much trauma with women, not understanding that we're looking for certain traits that don't match with ours. And so, and like I said, a man chasing woman is going to distract him from his purpose. So if you're chasing something that is pulling you away from your purpose, when it's not something you should have even been chasing to begin with, you're creating dysfunction. That dysfunction is going to procreate with that woman, and then they're going to have another bundle of dysfunction, who is also going to look at the two parents and see the dysfunction, and is going to have to make the decision: am I either going to breed more dysfunction, or am I going to understand that I am a masculine male, or I am a feminine male, to where, cutting the grass and changing the oil, that really just doesn't fit me. And so maybe you want that masculine woman. And here's the thing: the masculine woman chasing her career, that is her chasing her purpose. But when she comes back into the relationship, understanding she's the breadwinner, she's allowed to be more in her feminine bag, because she is fulfilled not only with the relationship dynamic, but because she's able to fulfill herself in the workplace the way you're saying. She's also the breadwinner. Instead of her, and think of it this way: instead of the woman displaying the masculine essence of taking out the trash or mowing the lawn, she is looking to be the head of department. She's looking to lead. She's looking to do all these things that historically has been attributed to the male, but she's looking to do it and be damn good at it. But then because she's fulfilled in what is her feminine, mind you, she's still a woman, she's fulfilled, but she's a masculine woman. So she is fulfilled as that woman, to where she can come back to her relationship with her man, and the sex will be better. The dynamic in itself will be better, because it is a known understanding of where you fit in this dynamic. Not me as a masculine male trying to chase another masculine male, and then we're trying to figure out, well, damn, neither one of us has time for each other. We done created a kid to where now one of us has to leave work.
I don't think that's how it works.
What do you mean?
I could have sworn you just said a masculine male chasing a masculine male.
No, he meant women. He meant
Did
women.
I not say woman?
You said male to male.
Okay,
but you meant
excuse
woman.
me. I meant to say a masculine male
That
chasing
happens too.
a masculine male chasing a masculine woman. That woman has the child. She now leaves work so the man can stay working, and now she is completely unfulfilled in her role as a feminine woman. And now she's just, now that dynamic that should have never even existed to begin with is now crumbling, creating more dysfunction, because now you have a masculine woman trying to tap into womanhood and be this nurturing person that she genuinely is not vetted to be, based on the situation that has been created.
But why?
Now, because she's not fulfilling herself. Remember, the masculine is the ability to chase. I'm not even gonna say the ability. You fulfill the masculine by chasing your goal, finding your purpose, and going that route. That woman that is chasing that CEO, what is a director role, whatever. There's a level of leadership and a level of discipline akin that, and again, as we look at it, akin to masculinity that they have to exude. So then you now take that from her, and she's now limited to just creating a child. She never was the home creator to begin with. And now you're expecting her to go from being the masculine, chasing her dreams, to now being the feminine, leaving everything behind, raising this child, knowing that there is nothing fulfilling coming from it. She's no longer chasing a purpose. She's no longer chasing her divine purpose. She's now taking care of this child, that, let's be honest, she may not have wanted to begin with. And now that woman is now going to not only have resentment towards the man she procreated with, but resentment towards the child, because she's now limited. And we'll just say limited. I'm not going to demean it anymore. She's not limited to just being a mother.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe to help better understand and find a middle ground, because I don't see.
But you did, bro.
Huh?
I think I understand your thought, and like I said, to play guy's advocate, like this is how I can reconcile it, because one, I found myself as a masculine male in the pool with other masculine women, and so I'm speaking from firsthand experience to where I understand, like you're a warrior of wisdom, to where you listen really well and you avoid situations based off of other people's experience. And it's like, nah, fuck that. I don't even want to know what you're talking about. Whereas for me, I've always been the trial and error. And I'm not saying that as it's not a backhanded compliment at all, because my godbrother is the same way. Like he listens to my trials and tribulations as a young father. And he's like, yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be in those shoes. And like, I know which routes to go based off of the decisions that you're making as a father. Not a backhanded compliment towards me. Like I've been doing a lot of good, but I'm definitely speaking from experience as far as like, and I'll be honest, my son's mother, she has a lot of masculine tendencies as far as wanting to cut grass and, do a lot of things that she saw her dad do. And so we always clash, me not being fully aware of it, as an 18 or 19-year-old, just not being in the dating pool at an earlier age. I didn't know better to ignore those signs, understanding that when it came time to create a dynamic that is supposed to stand the test of times, we are literally two polar opposites that can't come together. The two polar opposites that you ideally want to come together are people that are masculine and then people that are feminine, so that feminine can balance out the masculine, so that masculine can balance out the feminine. When you have two masculines, you have two people trying to lead. And it's like, nah, fuck that. I don't care what you think is the better route to go. I know my route is better. And then if your route fails, then she's there to rub it in your face, as far as, or if it was a masculine or feminine. Masculine, you're saying, yeah, this route is the route I want to go. And if it fails, she's there to console you and to challenge you to do better. So it's the difference between having that safe, I'm not gonna say safety net, having that feminine, I don't know if backbone is the correct word, but having that feminine woman to fall back on, to where she understands where you're at as a masculine male, and nurturing you. This goes back to the whole nurturing dynamic, nurturing you back to where you are back in your masculine essence, to where, yes, that was a temporary failure, but she's nurtured you back to the general, to where you're now going back in the battlefield ready to succeed. You understood that failure was not actually a failure, it was a lesson. Whereas that masculine woman, she's like, nah, like, I told you you should have listened.
And I don't think that's a natural dynamic. The second one, the first example that you gave, that is more akin to what I understand and think to be ideal, optimal, normative. All those things are synonymous in this case. Not always synonymous. If we want to play semantics, we can do that, but we're not doing this right now. They're not always equivalent, but in this instance they are. And so I want to land on something that we can agree on. So as far as my overarching concern, when it comes to masculinity and femininity, I think that I hope that we can agree that we definitely need more strong, positive examples of, and what I mean by strong is equality, not just strength as a synonymous with masculinity, but strong examples of what it is to be a strong, or what it is to be a black man and a black woman in both their divine aspects. We need more of that, because there's been a lack of seeing that dynamic over time, and that contributes to the very things that we're seeing. Is that something that we agree on? I'm just curious.
I think on a surface level, yes, but then it poses the question, well, you do understand that seeing a man in his divine masculinity may actually be a man that understands where he falls in that masculine range, to where he is a feminine man. And here's the thing.
There is no divine masculinity without understanding that.
And here's the thing, like, my My dad is the typical alpha male. Like we've clashed a lot as I grew up to my teens and my 20s until we had the understanding. Until I essentially had the understanding. I have listened, like him and I have talked, and he'll be talking about some of his friends to where the woman has a lot more control. Like she is the masculine woman. She controls the finances. She controls the house. But the man is still the breadwinner at the end of the day. He's like, man, I couldn't imagine a woman controlling me, telling me what I could do. But it is the understanding, and their dynamic is healthy. Like they've been married 30 plus years, like no arguments whatsoever. But in my dad's eyes, as the masculine man, he's like, man, I just could not imagine that. Whereas that masculine man that exudes some femininity, even though he's a straight male, he is happy and content, understanding that he's his own he's his own varying degree of divine masculinity.
I'm gonna explain something about that specifically. A man that is that masculine, that will take his pride and ego over knowing that he's not good at finances, that's where dysfunction happens. Because he wants to take over the finances, knowing he's not good at it, instead of letting the more masculine, skillful in finances woman, because she's a woman who should be feminine on this side, I should be more masculine on this side. Sometimes that's where dysfunction happens. You understand, Brian? Kind of just for that. No. That's how a home could fall apart, because I'm so masculine, I'm not gonna let somebody else look at the finances.
I hear you, but I don't think that providing the money, for example, and then handling thereof of the same money is the same thing. So, like, even, for example, if you're the breadwinner in your family, you might bring back the money and say that, okay, well, your wife, maybe she does work in finance, maybe she's smarter about those kinds of things. But even then, there could be a certain dynamic at play that does allow the manifestation of what I'm talking with Brian's ideal masculine and feminine dynamic. And then when you talk about these long-standing relationships, so an interesting thing, Des, I didn't know that it was quite this bad. You said that 80% of marriages end in divorce. I didn't know that was this. I knew it was high, but I didn't know it was 80.
80%
and so
of marriages end in divorce based on like finance.
Little more too.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. Well, anyhow, they end. There's not like a storybook ending or anything like that. And so that really begs the question of how much of that is contributed by the imbalance of masculine and feminine, because I have seen, and it's a rare number of cases of what we're talking about, and I don't like making the exception the rule. I don't like that at all. I don't think that's tenable, but I don't think that in the majority of those cases that does not affect the way that the woman perceives the man. I don't think you can get away from that. A few times there may be a situation or a relationship to where they do coexist in harmony. They do respect each other and their roles in the relationship. But I think it's far more difficult and far less common than the opposite. To where there is something like something being held over your head because you're not living up. It's like, okay, well, because it's like what we talked about with V, when she was saying when a woman is forced into being masculine. I don't think that women want to be masculine. I don't think that they should. And when I say women, I mean in general, like of course.
In relationships you talking about, or in the business world? Are you referring to in relationships they don't want to be masculine?
I think Brian's referring to in general, and that's what I'm trying to.
Well, I'm saying in relationships, because.
But if you're masculine in real life, you're gonna be masculine in a relationship. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. It's your character. Masculinity and feminism is who you are. It's who you are. It's not your gender or your. That's what I'm trying to get you. So the disconnect and this miscommunication is what you're. That's why I asked you, is masculinity only for men? Because if you say that, then that means gay men are all masculine, right? But no, that's not true. I believe gay men can be masculine and or feminine, just like straight men can be masculine and or feminine. I would love to have this conversation with you offline, because it's deeper, and I think. Because the best part is you know who you are and you know what you want and will not take, and that's the puzzle piece part, right? And so you know the woman you're looking for, correct? That's Absolutely. The best part of this, right? But I think because you're not understanding and I'm not saying this is properly right, but this mindset of feminism and masculinity to gender roles, even though you know what you want and you know who you are looking for and you know who you are, it leaves room for that dysfunction that we were talking about for you and your relationships. I'm just saying that. But like I said, this is a deeper conversation.
It is. And Mars, I'm willing to entertain that conversation. I also like to ponder my thoughts additionally after this.
Hold on, I have a question. Mars, you don't think it's possible for a woman to be masculine at their job and then not masculine in a relationship?
Yes, but let me explain something. Okay, the job, it's a specific like skill set, right? So when you go to work and you're good at writing papers, right? Because you write grants, right? You're gonna be good at writing grants at home or writing papers or writing something for your husband or something like that. It's your skill set, right? So if that skill set is not needed in a relationship, then no, she's not going to be masculine, right? You see what I'm saying? So it's still, I believe it's under your skill set. And so you may have even somebody that's super feminine, everybody's going to have either or trait. It just depends on under what umbrella or under what category you're using it for. So like you said, for work, yes, I do believe they could be masculine at work, but then home be feminine, because at work is not the same as if their work was being an escort or being a girlfriend, then sure, you see what I'm saying? But their work is different from doing their work in a relationship. Does that make sense? Did that kind of answer your question?
No, I'm going to let the cards rest. I'm going to respectfully, in the interest of time, I'm going to put the cards in my hand down and step away from the table. I am, however, curious, Josh, where do you stand on this matter, and what are your thoughts on the exchange that we've been having here?
I love how you say you're gonna put the cards down and ask me the same question.
Well, no, my cards are down.
I know, but I actually I kind of agree with both of you guys, to be honest with you. But to me, to be honest, I feel the whole masculine and feminine conversation was started due to the rise in independence of Black women and how Black men have basically reacted to it. And I feel a lot of this is a consequence of our trauma as Black people, because how many white people discuss the whole masculine feminine conversation all the time?
That's my point.
But they also for centuries have known their roles.
Exactly. That's why I say it's a consequence of the trauma of Black people, from whether it's slavery and then generational trauma that's been handed down and I think the constant disrespect of Black women, even by Black men, has caused their standards to evolve.
Yes.
Just like and I do this still the same way about men too. Like men's standards have evolved just like how women's standards have evolved.
That's a proximity bias. Because if we think about, and I always say it's a proximity bias on the base that we aren't around white people to hear them talk about it. But when we think about pride,
I mean, this white podcast this white lot of shit that we come in contact with. Like, to say it's a proximity.
Are you not familiar? There's tons of white podcast hosts in the red pill community.
That's not what I'm referring to when I say proximity bias. Like, so he stated like this talk about feminism and masculinity, it's a consequence of the feminism movement, and that how many white people do we hear talking about it, but I would honestly say it's in a sense it's an evolution based on what Mars said. Like, if you think about these pride movements and things of that nature, they're predominantly led by white people, and white people don't ask for anything, they fucking take it. Black people are the only people asking for something. We don't have the same gall that our white counterparts have. So we're not going to have a discussion panel of people, of homosexual or heterosexual white people that are struggling to find where they fit in this masculine or feminine realm. They're just going to fucking think about it, and then they're just going to do it. There isn't going to be this great philosophical debate about it. And to cycle back, like I did want to answer what Josh asked Mars. Like, I think it is possible for that masculine woman to come home and be in her divine feminine, because she is fulfilled chasing the divine masculine, and the man is taken care of what we have as described as feminism within the divine masculine, she is able to come into this space and be submissive. The same way a man who is chasing his divine masculine can come into a space and be submissive to his woman. But it is also the same understanding, and that it's the same understanding that it can coexist on both realms, to where maybe that woman does not want a monogamous relationship, to where she may also want multiple partners. Because the divine masculine, we can't say history has it to where, man has, 2 or 3 wives, and then the woman is just limited to one partner. As we open up this can of worms, it's also the understanding, like Mars has said, like it has to exist on both planes, to where that woman, that divine feminine who is just so happening to residing more on the masculine side, may also want those polygamous relationships as well. She's not satisfied because that man at home, he's not taking care of the business. He is struggling internally, and this is why, like, I'm trying to get so much understanding and clarity here, is that you choosing to be a masculine man, marrying or dating or procreating with a masculine woman, y'all have a kid, and then you choose to be the feminine, you're not going to take care of no house. She's going to come into that house and there's going to be nothing but chaos, because you are upset that you're no longer fulfilling your purpose. Therefore, you resent this child, you resent this woman, because she's out there chasing her dreams, chasing her goals, feeling fulfilled, and you're just at home cooking, cleaning, making sure all the work around the house is fulfilled. Yes, you may do it well, but you do it resentfully. You don't do it with genuine love. Women can feel that just as much as we feel it. So I do think they can coexist. But as far as just, talking about like proximity biases, and that we're only having this conversation, based on, and not only having it based on, feminism, the movement, but it really just boils down to white people don't ask for nothing. They go out and take it. White people shoot first, ask questions later. Black people like to analyze and say, okay, maybe I see you as a threat, or maybe I don't see you as a threat, or maybe I need a little bit more time before I come to a conclusion. That's why Malcolm X is so polarizing. Malcolm X ain't asked questions. He said, "You're white, I don't fuck with you." We don't got that same conviction. That is divine masculinity in its purest form. You have made a decision, and by any means necessary, you're gonna stick with it. That
and
woman is
going to
do
your
this.
character goes. That's where your character is, and your behavior is moved off of. That's crazy.
And to play God's advocate, yes, he did go to the Mecca, and he had great relations with white people in Africa and things of that nature. But based on the environment and the stipulations required, he stood 10 toes on that. White man is the devil. I don't give a fuck if you donate into my cause or whatever. You're doing it with some aforementioned ulterior motive. You may have had the most genuine concern for the Black man in America movement, but you're still a white man at the end of the day. I'm gonna take your money, but it's still fuck you.
I am not gonna bother to weigh in on that, because I mean, I respect your understanding of the history of Malcolm X and your knowledge of the autobiography. I mean, I think that you probably know more about him than I do. So I'm glad you did mention the last point about the latter part of his life, and how even in his autobiography, how he stated, like at the end, he stated that the white devil was not it wasn't an indictment of any one individual. It was the amalgamation of the impact.
Des, I wasn't disagreeing about you and Moses' point about the woman can't be masculine at work, and then can't be masculine at work and then be feminine at home either. By the way, just
No,
let you know.
I wasn't going against that.
He's asking.
It was my perspective of agreeing with Mars, just on a different playing field of how that woman can come into that home environment and be submissive and be the divine feminine.
That's probably the one of the women you want the most as a masculine man. Is the one that can do that and then come home and be submissive. Just know their role.
I want to say that it is possible, and I don't want to understate the difficulty of it, because that's something that when we had the episode back with your sister Diamond and we had Maj on, that's something that I had asked Maj specifically, because Maj is a very successful young woman, young Black woman, a very successful young entrepreneur, young professional, however you want to slice it. She's very successful, and so that requires a certain level of ambition. So I asked her, because I've heard from other women that as I've gotten older, interacting with in passing in work environments, in my friend group, whatever the case might be, about how they navigate that and things that I've seen and what they've shared and divulged to me. And it's something that does not come naturally. And so that does beg the question. I would like to think more on what you're saying about the innateness of masculinity and femininity when it comes to the individual that may oppose what I'm saying. So I'm not staunchly sitting here with my ears covered. And so I would like to take that into consideration and see how that plays into the overarching discussion here. But to the point, back to the original point, it's not easy. It is possible, but it requires a tremendous level of understanding. And I think that in order for that to coexist, there has to be a certain level of respect for the man.
What are you referring to exactly?
In order to have a woman who is able to turn that switch off when she gets home, she has to respect you and your leadership, your capabilities, your competence. Because if you don't take care of stuff at home, what do you think she's going to do? Well, she already kind of is skewed that way because of her ambitions of her personal goals, or things that she may have been raised around, things that makes up a large percentage of her life. And so, like we said earlier, she's going to resent you. It's like, this is so crazy. Episode 130 and all of these different conversations we've had are just like crossing and starting to weave together, like the episode with V, Maj, Diamond, this one we have with Pop Keys, the one we have with Tamer. Like everything is crossing up perfectly. And so I say that to say it doesn't.
Maybe life is linear.
I don't know anymore, man. But with regard to it's very difficult for a woman to turn it off. And so if you don't do that, if she no longer trusts and respects your leadership, your competency, she's gonna step in there. And it's not gonna be, like Des said, from that place of love. She's gonna be like, this bum ass X, Y, and Z. Every time you do something that's not right, you're gonna, like, the resentment's gonna build. She's not gonna do it with a gleeful heart, or it's just not gonna happen. I hope that I explained that well.
I agree, and like you said, it's more in the depth of why I agree. But yes, I agree with you. They have to respect the masculinity of you to be able to switch from that to submissive like that. And I totally agree.
I don't think a healthy relationship can exist between a man and a woman if there isn't respect.
I think in the grand scheme of things, like the reason why I brought up the divine femininity and divine masculinity is because it actually is it's a well-known quote, like if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And we typically spend the majority of our lives with our partner. And so if you don't have that understanding, you're going nowhere fast.
With a partner, some kind of partner. If it's not the same one throughout your life, it's your buddy, your best friend, your and also that you have to take into account masculinity and femininity with those relationships too.
Man, it's like I was subconsciously preparing for this, because 2 books that I've been listening to, No More Mr. Nice Guy is actually the recommendation of the week, by Dr. Robert Glover, and then Brian, the book I mentioned before, The Way of the Superior Man. Like those 2 books talk perfectly about masculinity and femininity, and then of course the masculine male who is in a monogamous relationship with with his mom, so he exudes a lot of feminine behaviors, whether it be, you know, covert contracts with his partners where like I'm only doing this stuff for an not unseen, but with a motive that's not communicated. Like I'm doing all this stuff with the expectation of submission, and then when the submission doesn't come, I'm acting resentful, and this is where this dysfunction comes into play. So that's why I'm specifically saying divine masculinity and divine femininity, because I've myself have been in those traps to where I've had those covert relationships, those covert contracts with women that I've dealt with in the past, and then I've also found myself on both ends, like being in a relationship with a woman that has a bit of a masculine aura, even though she is feminine, and you know she's feminine at the end of the day, having that masculine aura as well, and then also being in a relationship with a truly feminine woman and not knowing how to accept that because of past behaviors that I've just naturally become callous and accustomed to. And then you push that feminine woman away, and it's like the emotions that come with that, man, like you're not ready for it. Like normally you're ready to go back and forth with the bickering, and now it's like when you're falling out with the woman that is truly feminine, she's asking questions about why you feel this way and things of that nature, and it's like, well, damn, like I'm genuinely not accustomed to that. Like I don't even know how to like
big shift.
Yeah, I don't know how to articulate my emotions to come up with a response. So like previously I've always said like my biggest red flag is to just ghost, because I haven't been able to articulate that. And so understanding that has been a response of me dealing with masculine women, knowing that we clash in that to where I've always had to lead, and then not having that comfort on the back end of if something goes wrong, and then being in a relationship to where you have that comfort on the back end when something goes wrong. And it's like it's just two completely different. It's obviously you're different with polar opposites. So meeting in the middle of that polarity, or being on any end of that polarity, it's like it is almost a culture shock in a way. But yeah, man. Let's talk about what we talking about. We talking about some survival skills.
Yeah. I would love to have another conversation with you at a later time about the way the superior man, because that's a book that I read over the pandemic, and I have my own thoughts about it. And then
there's a lot of shit he says in there that is very questionable, but
that's that divine masculinity that you were talking about.
No, it was a divine bullshit. Matter.
Well, he's gonna be 10 toes down on whatever he's saying. You understand? Like that's how he feels. Yeah. That's how he's gonna run his behavior. You know.
It was one of the books. It was a lot of it was very spot on. There were portions that were very spot on, but there was other things that when I read, I like to experience things for myself. Contrary to what Des might think, when it comes to like media or books or things like that, when somebody says, oh, this movie sucks, or this book sucks, or this idea is dumb, I want to actually understand it. When it comes to actually doing things, that's when the wisdom comes into play. And so when I read that book, some things just didn't sound right to me. And after I read the book, because I took notes, and then afterwards I was thinking like, okay, so how was this book received, and have other people identified these things? And the answer was yes. And so
it challenges I'm not gonna say the patriarchal system, but it challenges the patriarchal system that is a consequence of Christianity. And what I mean by that is even in No More Mr. Nice Guy, one of the things that they bring up is polygamy, and just understanding as at a male early on that you may be a man that wants to have multiple wives, or you may be a monogamous man. But that doesn't determine if you are a feminine male, or if you're a feminine masculine male, or if you're just a truly masculine male. If you get what I'm saying? Like you can want both. Excuse me, you can't want both, but you can want one or the other, and your masculinity not be deterred by being with one woman as opposed to being with three. And I will say in No More Mr. Nice Guy, that is one of the conflicting things. And a lot of people do. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Yaki Awaken, but that's something they talk about as well. And even Mike Rashid,
yes,
like they talk about polygamous relationships, and like it's just I understand it now because reading or not reading, but listening to these books, that's something that they talk about, and it's just understanding where you fall out and where you fall at in the realm of masculinity is going to dictate which route you go. And I mean, for me, I've never been the type that entertain, polygamous relationships, but I understand because one of the things that they're talking about in, in Way of the Superior Man, it's like it doesn't matter how much you love your woman, that masculine aura within you is going to want to look at something else. But you also have to have the discipline and the checks and balance to where, in one of the ways they described it is a guy was a guy talking, they're talking about this girl that he works with, and he goes, man, you've been talking about someone's for a while, why don't you just go ahead and act on it? And then you go through the checks and balances in your head. Well, damn, if I fuck this shorty, then now my marriage is in limbo. It's not worth the limbo. I'll just commit to my woman. It's one of those things where it's like, and it really put things in perspective for me because I remember being young and dating, and that being a reoccurring thing. It's like, no, I really love you, but you got different shapes and colors and sizes, and you got all this. Like it's hard not to look, but just because I look doesn't mean that I love you. It's just that, like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a dog in me, but look, it's
but you're okay with that relationship going in limbo. That's like you said, it's that discipline.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, I get it, but it's not worth what I currently have. So it's definitely, like I said, it is the recommendation of the week. Again, that we'll make two: No More Mr. Nice Guy, and then Way of the Superior Man, because it ties perfectly into
Josh
my reason.
To say something.
No, you can finish. I can say it after.
No, go ahead. I was finished after that.
Oh, okay.
I can appreciate those recommendations.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you.
I haven't read the No More Mr. Nice Guy, but I mean, part of everything is being a smart consumer. So taking the information, use what's useful, discard what's not. That's offers great recommendations every week.
It's funny. You guys were talking about masculinity and femininity, like the whole episode, and I and just to finish my point of what your question you asked me about you guys' discussion, like I said, I agree with most of you guys, like with both of you. Like I do agree, like a guy can be masculine and feminine. You know what I mean? Like, just me as an example, I grew up like I played wrestling, but I also played with dolls with my sister before, like growing up, like so like I've been in bed, I've held a woman, she's held me too, like I've been a little spoon too. like and I'll put it this way, like as how many times I made you come, shit, you better be holding me and fucking and fucking rubbing my head, shit. But I just think it's funny, but I really do think like a lot of these values, like when it comes to like toxic masculinity and why we're discussing it right now, we get from the white man. I like when we go back to what Pop Key said, I like what he said about ruling in a different way from the white man. And I'll end with this, but that's what I really like what he said, because I feel like in this white nationalist society, we as Black people have adopted a lot of certain cultural norms from the white man, whether that be being less accepting of other groups, with how Black people were with homosexuals, and some even still are, similar to how white people were with almost every other group in throughout history, or in some ways adopting the same misogynistic culture that the white man spread across countries and across this country and other countries, and use it to grasp power, kind of similar to what Elijah Muhammad did with his secretaries, or even lacking any type of open-mindedness due to being overly patriotic. And I don't mean necessarily being overly patriotic as in loving the country, but patriotic as in being completely devoted to whatever tradition or religion they were raised on, and completely unwilling to listen to different perspectives. As an example, yeah, exactly. Like as an example, the religion of Christianity was placed upon Black people in slavery, and taught them to be docile and accepting what's happening now, because there's a hereafter, while white people benefit in the here now. And today, many Black people still go by that same philosophy, contributing to the inferiority complex that has been placed upon them. So I love what he said about like leading in a different way from the white man, because we have to show we're morally superior. And in order to do that, we have to reboot the culture, so to speak. So we can get out of this inferiority complex that has been placed upon us. And I believe the only way to successfully do that is without white involvement. That's not what I'm talking about. Separation. Not segregation, separation. Segregation is the forceful removal of two groups of people by one superior group. Separation is the separation of two equal groups for the benefit of both groups. So that's why I say that, because with the white involvement, exploitation and profit becomes the focus always. Always. And black people need to get out of the white man's culture, the cultural realm of money equates to worth, and build up morals and worth based on character and traits. Like Sherm said it earlier in the season, accountability and responsibility. Rosetta said earlier in the season, having awareness, whether it's that's with yourself, your family, or the community. Brian said it earlier in the season, having the sexual discipline and not create broken homes and display healthy masculinity. And Des said it earlier in the season, being a parent and knowing the importance of telling your kid when you're wrong. So that's why I say, and I think if you follow those traits, you don't have to worry about like, what does it mean to be masculine? If you follow those traits, you good. So I think really when it comes to like the masculine and the feminine fucking conversation, I think we're just like, we talk about it so goddamn much. And me growing, I've never worried about that. I never worried about like, damn man, is she gonna be like, I've of course experienced masculine females and I had to learn to navigate through that, but I don't worry about, damn man, how will my masculinity come off? How would my femininity come off? You know, the important thing is to find somebody that's understanding. You know what I mean? I know Maj said find somebody that matches you, but find somebody that's at the very fucking least understanding. So they understand your point of view, your perspective, and then you guys can build off of that. But I'm gonna leave it there, man.
Gosh.
And understanding only goes through communication. I like when Josh
Exactly.
I like when Josh talks.
Joshua Freeman, ladies and gentlemen. It's like, yo, you had that. You had one in the chamber ready.
Because you guys was like really going and going.
I know. That's why I was like,
Josh
had something
to say. I was just thinking like, why are we just so obsessed with this fucking conversation? Like, just you guys are good. Like, if you got the traits, you won't have to worry about that. It's just about finding the other person that's understanding. And then you guys build off of that. Like I said, I like to be held. Like I like to fucking do the grass. I want to do the grass. I want to make that.
You gotta know that about you, Josh. That's why. That's where the masculine and feminine come into play. Because you have to know that you are okay with having feminine traits as being a small spoon. I'll be the small spoon too, but I have to use my masculine to say it and have the balls to say it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's a masculine thing to do. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You guys have anything else though?
I appreciate you all tremendously. I just want to say that it's like every time I talk to you, it's like a newfound appreciation. And though we do disagree sometimes, but largely I think that we challenge each other for the better, and we learn and we grow. And this episode was just phenomenal. I could not have asked for a better culmination to season 6. So thank you, the three of you.
Thank you, Morris, too. Basically the honorary guest this season.
No, I appreciate you guys for having me, man. Like I said, what Brian just said, literally every time I talk to you guys, I'm sitting here like you guys might, whoever does the cutting might see my reactions sometimes. Man, I'll be out here like, whoo, like my notes after is crazy. It's it's crazy, dude. I love when you guys speak, and I have some real good stuff. I don't really, like you said, you listen to those books, right, Des? I'm gonna need those too because I have to listen. I can't read. I mean, I can read. I don't. I'm sorry.
I mean, you put your education to we talking about how to give back to the youth.
Hey, well, look, if I got ADHD. You feel me? So I'd rather listen to it while doing something else. You feel me? So I'm actually progressing and I can give back to the youth while I'm reading the book.
I knew what you meant.
So no, yeah, but I appreciate you guys every time.
All right, if you guys like the discussion, don't forget to hit the like button, and of course, check out all the content from season 6. It's dope, right? It's dope, right?
Of course. Why is it a question?
Of course. All right. See you guys.
You're the only person who asks questions, Josh.
Peace.
you don't play, you don't play, you don't play.